Everybody, I'm Carin. I'm alcoholic. How many people were here last week?
Oh, yeah.
I have yet to crack a book, Maddie. Just telling you, no books are out here. But I will tell you before I begin, there's two schmageggies sitting over there between Pat and Maddie, and they could call me out at any given time tonight. So we're going to do the best we can. I'm Carin. I'm an alcoholic. You guys look so good to me. Every Tuesday, it's where I need to be, and I need to be with you, and I need to be seeing you. And the reason I come in person is I need to see your nodding heads. I need to know that I belong here. Anyway, tonight I thought they'd take longer with the chips. I just have to tell you, this would be an abbreviated version, but apparently not. Tonight we're going to talk about the seventh step, which by definition is the shortest step on the list. So you would think that it's the least important, but in my sobriety, it was the most important. My sponsor, Albert, was a little on the strict side, not terribly, but a little on the strict side. And he said, when I said, I'm ready to do the steps, and I think I was 30, 45 days sober. No, you're not. How about it 60 days? No, you're not. How about it 75 days? Nope, no steps for you. He did not allow me to start my steps until I was 90 days sober. And there's a reason for that. Because by the time you're 90 days sober, you are so nuts and so crazy, and you so can't sit with yourself that you will do anything your sponsor tells you to do. Because your level of uncomfortability is so high at 90 days with no help. I'll do anything. Tell me what to do. I'll do anything. Because the one thing that you figured out at 90 days is that you're not fabulous. That's a problem. And not only are you not fabulous, but if you're like me and you went over your lists, then you really see it in writing how fabulous you aren't. So we get to the seventh step, and now I know that I'm not fabulous. And now I know that it's written down from my fourth step and given over to my fifth step. And I've, made this decision in my sixth step to get rid of this stuff. By the time I get to my seventh step, I'm fairly nauseous. I got to get rid of this. I don't know how to get rid of it, but I know that I have to get rid of it because I'm at that point where if I don't get rid of it, I'm just going to vomit, or if I don't vomit, I'm going to drink. And that's the point that you want to be at for your seventh step. You don't want to get to your seventh step and you're calm and you're, in a good place. You're not giving anything up. Not if you feel like that. So by the time we get there, we become willing to take a series of actions. And I love that he told me this. This was Clancy who used to tell me this all the time. He says, this is really what we do in these steps is a series of actions that we're asked to take that in our infinite wisdom we know will not work. But we take them anyway. And we're surprised when they work. And then, of course, we take credit for taking them. But the reality is that I'm willing to do whatever it is that you tell me to do so that I can get rid of this crap that's living inside of me. But the problem is that, after we take them and we believe that this stuff works, then some person, some spirit, some whatever in AA comes over and tells you that you've now begun on your spiritual journey. They didn't tell me that in the sixth step. They didn't tell me that in the fifth step. They just told me to do what to do, and I did it. Now I get to the seventh step, and they tell me that you're on your spiritual journey. And the thing is, with a spiritual journey, you get spiritual solutions. And the thing is, with a spiritual solution, your problems aren't solved. They're not solved. They are simply lifted away. That's a tough nut to swallow. What about my bills, and what about my rent, and what about my crappy marriage, and what about a job I don't want to be in? This is spiritual. I'm spiritual now. Why haven't all these things been solved? Because we get a spiritual solution. And when we get a spiritual solution, our problems are simply lifted away. So the thing is that you can only take this action when everything becomes too much for you. And you get that way by the time you get to the seventh step. Everything is too much for me, and I'm sober. So in case I didn't believe what I thought I believed in the first step, I'm sober, and these problems are overwhelming for me. Forget about when I was drinking. Now you're telling me that I've lived all this time, months, 90 days, 100 days, whatever it is, I get to step 7, I'm sober, and I feel worse than I have felt in a long time. And the thing is also is that, I didn't hit a bottom when I was drinking. I want to make that clear. They talk about, why all this insistence that we hit bottom. I did not hit a bottom. When I got low and I got really low, I just lowered it, just lowered the measure, and so I could say, well, I didn't get there. I wasn't that bad, and then when at the end, after 25 years of drinking, when I was walking on the streets of Broadway, not fully clothed, most of the time in pajamas, eating out of garbage cans, I lowered the measure. I mean, where else, how much lower could it have gone? But I never thought that I had hit bottom. And I read that and I said, well, I'm here anyway, so you got to take me just the way that I am. And that's pretty much how I've worked this program, in case you haven't figured this out. That I worked it with a sponsor who knew how to handle me because I didn't have a bottom. And the other thing is that when I got sober, I had these ideas. That part in the big book, suddenly a thought occurred to him, like this great new idea. I had many of those, and none of them ever turned out well. None of them. So I would have a thought that I'd say, it's not really a spiritual solution. I know what it is. I need to go to the gym. I'm out of shape. I got to go to the gym. If I go to the gym and I work out, everything is going to be fine. Everything will be fine. I'll get a raise. That guy will love me again. I'm going to get that house. I'm going to go to the gym. So what do? I go to the gym. And I'm in the gym every single day and I'm working out. And after 30 days, I wake up one day and I say, this isn't it either. And so I think, I know, I'll quit my job. It's a crappy job. They don't appreciate me. I'm going to find another job. Now I'm going in and I'm going to start searching for jobs because I'm going to get a better job. And when I walk in, they're going to say, we have been waiting for you our entire career. Where have you been? And I quit my job and I take this new job. And within 2 weeks, I can't stand this job. What am I doing here? And by the way, they've hired me to do something I don't know how to do. And so I wake up one day and I think, this isn't it either. And I think, well, I know what I'll do. I'll get married. That will cure everything. And so I did it again and again and again and again and again. And that wasn't it either. I'm fairly hard-headed in this program, and that wasn't it either. So what did I see? I started to see from the old-timers, but more importantly from the day counters, that if they were doing the things that they were asked to do, even though they didn't think that they would work and they did them anyway, they seemed to be doing better than me. That's what I want to say, better than me. And over time, what that looked like, doing things better than me, was that was the first seeds of faith that were planted in me. That's the first time I was able to look at somebody in Alcoholics Anonymous and say, he's doing better than me. What are you doing? And to be able to talk to somebody, what are you doing? What is your sponsor doing? What are the things you're willing to do that you don't believe in? So because these steps, by the way, are only designed to offer us a way of life, I don't know where they ever got this thing, beyond your wildest imagination. That didn't happen for me, like ever. I never lived a life beyond my wildest imagination. All AA has done for me, all these steps has done for me, is create a life that I can live without having to have a drink to stand it. That's it. Everything else is up to me. That's what I get from the steps. That's what God gave me. I will allow you to live your life without having to take a drink or a drug just to stand your life. And, that's the attraction. That's the attraction. And if you say it long enough in the rooms, newcomers are going to come over to you. Old timers are going to come over to you. And they're going to say, if you want what we have, if you want this life where you don't have to have a drink, you have to do what we do. I'm a real alcoholic. And I have a problem with authority. I know that's hard to imagine, but I have a problem with authority. When you would tell me what to do, I would instantly shy away. I would instantly tell you that you're full of it and I don't need to listen to you. But, eventually, all you guys did was wear me down. That's it. You just wore me down. The story I told you a few weeks ago about when I hit the guy in the room and he went down? I got a phone call from another guy. I thought there was only one. I got a phone call from another guy out of the blue from Evanston, Illinois, who saw me speak in South Africa last week. And he said to me, I had a feeling that was you. I said, how did you know? He said, because in your third week of sobriety, you hit me. I said, I have no memory of that. Do I need to apologize? And he said, yes, we even apologize for things that we don't remember doing. I had no recollection. I said, maybe that's why he moved to Evanston, Illinois and got out of New York. I have no idea. But he ran after that. He's sober a long time. He's 79 years. I thought, oh my God, I've hit the 79-year-old. But so I I don't even know where that came from, actually. So I want to talk about exactly what step 7 is, because it's spiritual. But the problem with step 7 is that it's not only spiritual, it's not pretty. It's not a pretty step. It deals with perfection. It deals with humility. And it deals with fear. In step 7, when I worked it, this is what I was taught. Step 7 basically says that when the shit hits the fan, step to the left. That is the entirety of step 7. I could sit down right now. When the shit hits the fan, step to the left and let God handle the shit. If I had just been able to remember that on a daily basis, I would have been great. But what I did was I played Let's Make a Deal with God. And I don't know why I've done this, but I've done this 100 times. Because in my heart of hearts, I knew at that point, at 90 days sober, into these steps, that my case was different. I wasn't like you. If you had my husbands, if you had my jobs, if you had my apartments, you'd be drinking too. My case is different. And even though, I thought I had the answers, the most bizarre thing is that I never got it right. I have yet to meet an alcoholic who said, I got this stuff right, I didn't need the steps. I'm good to go. I never got it right. And I struggled. I struggled to remain in charge because I have a problem with authority. And for the life of me, I can't tell you what I was in charge of. That's the thing. What exactly was I in charge of? So I want to go into this a little bit because I did say I would go into a little bit. You'll get much more of this in the 11th step. But, I think about this, I wanted to be in charge. I wanted to be in control. I was married for the 3rd time, and I finally married for love. It's out there. I finally married for love. And he was, quite frankly, the love of my life. And we'd known each other a long time. And we got married. He had a kid. I had a kid. They were the same age. And we're going back in the 80s, by the way. And when you were in an interracial marriage in the 80s, not so easy. Not so easy to find housing, not so easy to find neighbors that would talk to you, not so easy to do anything. It was not a pleasant experience, but we were so in love and so together that we didn't care. And we decided, since we had these 2 other kids, that we should have a kid of our own. We thought that would be absolutely beautiful. We'll make this big Brady Bunch thing or whatever we were going to do. And we tried for 3 years. And we tried repeatedly for 3 years. And finally, after 3 years, we went to the doctors. He went to his and I went to mine. And I came back that night over dinner and I said, my doctor says I'm fine. We can move ahead. He said, my doctor says I'm not so fine. I have AIDS. And in the 80s, it's 100% mortality. 100% mortality. If you're an alcoholic like I am, and went to meetings in Manhattan, it wasn't a day that went by that someone didn't come in and say, hi, I'm Carol. I'm an alcoholic. I got the virus, but I'm going to beat it. Everybody died. Everybody died. And then, of course, that was the first thought. And then the second thought was, what about me? What about me? We've been trying to have a child for 3 years. And the doctors told him at the same time that not only did he have AIDS, but he'd had it for more than 15 years. And so we were catapulted. They say you get catapulted into the 4th dimension. We were catapulted into a brand new world, a completely different world. And it's funny, he wasn't sick until they told me he had AIDS. Then he got sick, and he was sick for years, and we lived a fairly unimaginable existence for years. And I never got it. I went for 16 AIDS tests in 4 years. And in those days, it took 3 months to get your results. And so we used to get tested up in Harlem. I'd go up to Harlem. You did it anonymously because in those days, if you tested positive, they took your kids. You were in a no-win situation. You'd go up there and we would test. I would test anonymously, and my sponsor, Albert, went with me, every single time. And then we would have to wait 3 months. And you know how good we are at waiting for anything. We would wait 3 months just in time to go back to get my results. And they'd say, go in the other room, you got to test you again. And this went on for 4 years. Every 3 months, I'm there for another test. So, I would like to tell you that the house imploded and things were horrible. But the reality is that, God had entered my house in the most extraordinary way. I didn't see it. He saw it. I just didn't understand a lot. I didn't understand anything. He was much more spiritual than I was. He had God solely, living inside of him. I had nothing. Remember, this is my first 5 years of sobriety where I've worked this program without a God in my life. And so I didn't even have a God, big enough or there enough for me to say, screw you, this is what you gave me. You finally give me this love of my life and sprinkle a little AIDS on us, and here we go. I didn't even have that. I had nothing. And so, I would talk to Albert about it, and I talked to everybody about it. I couldn't shut up about it because every time we got to go to the hospital, every time he got sick and they pushed us into the ambulance to go to the hospital, when we walked into the hospital, they used to wrap us in plastic because they didn't know how you got the disease. Even his doctor died of it. It's just an unbelievably frightening, horrible time that I couldn't figure out how to get out. And as this is going on, I'm getting sicker myself up here and in here. I'm getting sicker. He's getting sicker physically. I'm getting sicker spiritually to the point where I can't function anymore. And I was desperate for some kind of control. And I had done this step, and I understood what this step was about. And I understood when the shit's hitting the fan that I have to step to the left. But I couldn't figure out where the left was. And I kept going back and forth in front of the fan, trying to figure out how to get in control of this. And so what I want to say is that we have to be careful in this program when we think we hear the word of God. Sometimes it's just, you talking to you. And we got to be careful what we pray for. And we'll talk a lot about that in the 11th step on how we actually pray. But I have a very clear memory of figuring out how to get into control here. And I used to pray in the shower. And I would talk to a God I didn't believe in, and I would hit my head against the tile on the wall. It was a rhythmical hitting of my head. And that is how I prayed to God, a God I didn't believe in. And so one night I figured out that I knew the prayer. And I said, just will you do me a favor, whoever you are, just do me a favor, and just give him one day of normal. Give him one day where he's not sick. Give him one day where he's not talking to people in the walls. Give him one day where the kids can talk to him and he knows who they are. Just one day. Can you do that for me, please? Because I was a good deal maker with God. And he heard me. Because the next day he died. And he got every single thing that I asked for. But he didn't die the way I wanted him to die. He went down to the West 4th Street station and jumped in front of the subway. And he was killed immediately. And I'm going to talk more about what happened after that in the 11th step. But I say this tonight to tell you that when I'm looking at that 7th step, what I came up with was, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it took many, many people in Alcoholics Anonymous to convince me that it worked perfectly, that what happened was exactly what was supposed to happen. And that whatever kind of prayers I was looking for, they had ultimately been answered. So I want to turn the page for a minute and talk a little bit about what the step is supposed to do for me, what it's supposed to do for you. And it talks about, removing our defects of character or shortcomings or whatever you want to call them. What I called them, they were my tools for survival. These are the things I used to get me out of crisis situations. I lived a life of drama and crisis. And by the way, I'm not so much better now, I need to tell you. 37 years sober, if there's no drama, I'm stirring it up. I can't possibly live with serenity and nicety and be with me a while. You'll figure it out. I don't know how to do that to this day, but it is what it is. It is never going away. And I think that, God leaves some things behind for amusement. That's what I think. And that's been left behind. And I love the drama. I'm not going to say I'm a drama queen or a drama princess, but I seek it out. I seek it out. And then I go to talk to my sponsor and I go, what's wrong here? What's wrong? And I am talked down every single time. And sometimes I think that's the best pattern to have. When you have these things blow up and you get to talk to your sponsor and he gets to tell you exactly what's going on with you. But, finding, your defects of character or your shortcomings or your tools for survival and asking them to be removed, that's nothing. Nothing. Go ahead. You can sit here and do it right now. Just take them away. Take them away. And how do you know they're gone? When they're not there anymore. That's it. That's the entire step, except that it's not. when you make a decision to give them away and you give them away, how do you know when they're not there? Well, they're not there. That's it. But here's the other thing, what's not there? Lying and cheating and stealing. And stealing, by the way, has a bigger definition than you ever thought possible, because it's stealing someone's love and stealing their peace of mind and stealing their respect and stealing all the things that you can't see. And they used to call it, when I was growing up in AA, the black and blue marks on the inside, that nobody could see. So even when you still love some of these defects, you think, well, I think maybe I'll get rid of some of them. You got the list. Some of these I really like. One of the ones I really liked was sleeping with your man. And I conveniently left that off the list because I liked it. Not that I wanted your man, by the way. I just wanted to do the nasty and move on. And that was it. I didn't want any kind of commitment. I didn't want to get married. I really didn't want to get married. I didn't want to do anything like that. So I left it off the list. But Albert was a smart sponsor. And he said, what about this over here? And I had to take a look over there. And I said, I don't really want to get rid of that. So he said, so you want to get rid of just some of your defects? So I said, yes, I just want to get rid of some of my defects. And the other is, I'll make that decision when they should go. And I'll let you know when I'll have to get rid of those. But for the moment, I just want to get rid of some of them. He said, well, the problem with getting rid of some of them is that there's no help available to get rid of some of them. There's only God's help. And God doesn't make deals. And so you turn around and say, well, this must be where the humility comes in. Must be, because the only help available is perfect help. And that perfect help is God's help. The problem is that now you have me thinking about perfection. That's a real problem for me, because I'm not talking about being perfect. You gave me the big book. There's no perfection in there. It's progress, not perfection. And now I'm in the 12 and 12, and all we're talking about is perfection, and I think it's a bit much. Because God is perfect, but what about me? I'm not perfect. And Albert said he's not saying, they're not telling you to be perfect. They're telling you that you are painfully aware of your imperfections. And I thought, well, I feel that way every time I look in the mirror. I am painfully aware of what's not perfect in me physically. And then I'm painfully aware of what's not perfect in me inside. And and sometimes I would get to the point where I would think you could see what was on the inside. I was painfully aware of my imperfections. So that wasn't what they were talking about at all. They were talking about God's perfection. And then it led me into having to humbly ask him. Well, what does that mean? Why can't I just ask him? Can't I just do the real asking? Like, come on, just do it? What is the difference between humbly asking and like regular asking? So regular asking is, so years and years and years ago on marriage number 5, and I rarely talk about this marriage because I want to stay out of jail. That's how I feel about it. But in marriage number 5, we were in North Carolina, and we were invited to this house for dinner. So it must have been some celebration or something. At the end of dinner, the wife comes out and brings out a cake that's 42 layers of like cake and chocolate and jelly and cake and 42 layers, and it took her 2 days to make. And she puts it on the table, and everybody's eating it, and the cake is great. And now you fast forward into Christmas time of that year, and I'm thinking, I'd like to have one of those cakes for my guests when they come for Christmas. Why don't I just call her up and ask her for the cake? Like a regular ask. The difference between asking humbly and a regular ask is that I knew how much work it took to make the cake. And that's what we're doing in AA. We are making the cake. So we can't just regular ask him to do this. We have to humbly ask him to do this. And if you're in AA for any amount of time at all, that's exactly how many definitions of humility you're going to hear. And that's okay. Whatever suits you. I have had the same definition of humility my entire sobriety, and that's to remain teachable. Period. That's it. No more, no less. I'm not on the floor. I'm not, genuflecting. I'm not, hitting myself over the back of in my back. It is remaining teachable for a long period of time. I'm sober a long period of time. I still remain teachable. Worse than that, I still listen to what you have to say. That's a horrible feeling. Just horrible. You would think after all this time I would know, but I don't know. And, and unfortunately, I ask people that are in my life, and then I never want to see them again. Because I've humbled myself. And so, yeah. So it's becomes, in my version of humility, it actually widens the definition to when they talk about surrender. Surrender. There's no mention of the word surrender in the first 164 pages of the big book. You know that, Pat. Never mentions the word surrender. It does, however, mention the word abandon several times. And so that set me on a path of, instead of surrendering to this program, because surrender for me, I'm all about the conditional surrender. I'm the deal maker. You know, I'll give up this if you give up this. This is how I dealt with my defects, with my shortcomings. I'm making deals all over the place until I understand that none of that is going to be working. And the thing about being humble is that it's not over after the seventh step. You get to use that. You get to use that for the rest of your life. You get to have that gift in your life. And by the way, that's the principle that you get from the seventh step, is humility. You know, otherwise, if I don't have humility, what happens? I think I can handle the shit. And I can't handle the shit. And the only thing that is improved in my life on a daily basis is that I know how to step to the left now. I am no longer like, you know, this, like this, like this in front of the fan. When the shit hits the fan, I know how to step to the left, and there is always somebody there waiting for me. That's a gift. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. I also want to say that when that happens, you know, I've lost my armor. We've talked about that before. And I've allowed only God to protect me. Now, that's a risk. That's a big risk. Just God is going to protect me. Not my boyfriend, not my daddy, you know, not my kids. No one will protect me but God, which means that I have perfect protection. Perfect protection. And if you're an alcoholic like me, and we'll talk about this in a minute, I spent most of my time, you know, being afraid. Perfect protection it's godly. It's just godly. You know, because I remain teachable, I can take those risks and I can learn from them. But here's the trick. You know, when you're in a situation when you used to lie and you don't, because you've asked for the lying to be removed, so you don't lie, don't tell anybody. Just thank God. Thank God for taking the lie. Or when you're in a situation where you used to judge that person, don't judge them, but don't tell anybody. Just thank God. And when you take something, when you want to take something from somebody that's not yours, is theirs, but you want to take it and you don't say anything to anybody. Don't brag about it. Don't talk about it. Just thank God. Because that solidifies exactly the chain of events. There's no human power in there. There's no human tapping you on the shoulder saying, don't take that. Because we do know as alcoholics, all takers are losers. We're all losers. And most of us, if I could count the room, probably 95% of us in this room grew up as scorekeepers. So I'm very busy keeping score with these defects and what's good and what's bad and what works for me and what doesn't work for me. But the hardest thing I've had to do is not lie and not tell anybody about it. And not steal and not tell anybody about it. And it became a covenant between me and God. A strong covenant, because we're the only ones that know. That's it. You know, the other thing that comes from this, which is a little bit on the weirdo side, is that one of the things that happens to us when you do the seventh step, and we begin to see these things are removed from us. You know, I'm not lying and I'm not stealing and, you know, I'm not doing these things that I was doing before. So I begin to feel a little bit better. And because I'm me and because I'm smart, I turn around and say, I think I need less meetings because I feel much better. So why should I be spending all my time in these meetings? So I think I'm going to go out there and live life a little bit. You know, and the other thing is that while I'm living life a little bit, because I've cut on my meetings, you know, I remember that I miss reaching for the pain. I miss that. I would like that back in my life momentarily because I know how to get rid of it. Or because I'm uncomfortable when I'm not afraid. I'm uncomfortable without the fear in my life. I'm an alcoholic that woke up afraid. And I've heard this from people that you wake up afraid, and I couldn't tell you what I was afraid of, but I had that football of fear in the pit of my stomach, And I'm an alcoholic that went to sleep with a bottle of Jack Daniels on the nightstand and a couple of joints and something that buzzed and did a bunch of things that I needed to get to bed and to wake up in the morning. Oh, now you get the joke? But I'm uncomfortable when I'm not afraid because my default settings are fear and manipulation and anger and jealousy and all of the things that are on that list. Those are my default settings. And all AA has done, a little at a time, having me take actions that I don't believe in, but I take them anyway, is lift these things. And the only thing that I have gotten is that I get to live my life a day at a time without having to have a drink to stand it. I don't become an angel. I don't become a do-gooder. My sponsees will tell you I am not a do-gooder and I am not an angel. I'm not even nice. But I do know that the answer begins like a powerhouse in step 7. It is probably the most important step that we get to, because everything else is kind of easy. It's like by rote. You just write the stuff down, give it away, you just do what people tell you. Step 7 is you and God. It's just me and God. And so I want to talk a little bit about fear. My old friend fear. This is how I had to write this down because I was laughing so hard. This is how I experience fear. What do I deserve here? Are they paying me too much? Is this what I want? Is this what I deserve? Is this what I think I deserve? Or is this what I deserve and what I think I want? Are they paying me enough? And if I get it, is this what I wanted in the first place? These are the conversations that go on in my head over and over and over again. And I can't really tell you what I'm afraid of. At the end of the day, I have no idea. So I force my solution. And an alcoholic forcing a solution, you're well on your way to a drink. You're well on your way to a drink. We talk about this all the time in the study of these steps, week after week after week, where if we don't do what they tell us to do, the only answer, the only thing that's going to happen to you is you're going to drink. You're going to be up here taking up another white coin. You'll come back. You'll come back because this is what feels good. At the end of the day, this is where we belong. At the end of the day, this is where we know each other without ever being introduced. So if you don't do these things and you don't understand how it is to get with God, you'll be back here anyway. You'll be back here anyway, looking for something you couldn't figure out. So step 7 reduces my fear to only 2 things. This is probably the best of all the steps when they finally told me what was wrong with me, which was what I was afraid of. Which pretty simple, is not getting something that I want. I was afraid of not getting something I wanted, and I was afraid of losing something I already had, or in my case, it was something that I imagined that I had. Yeah. But it felt like the same thing. Something that I had, or something that I was afraid of losing, and that was it. And any time that I'm afraid, I have to tell you, I ask myself to this day, what am I afraid of? Which is it, column A or column B? It's never anything else. And by the way, the solution is always the same as the problem. It's me. It's me. I'm the one that's afraid. I'm the one that's taken the reins back. I'm the one that has said, there's no room for you here, God. It is just me. I am on my own. And that's how fear manifests itself in me. So what happens? When I can't figure out what I'm afraid of, I have to humble myself and ask someone else. Humility will take you into every situation you have. It's not just the 7th step. That's the least of it. When you finish taking your 7th step, you are loaded with humility. You are loaded with the ability to ask for help. And thank God we are loaded with the ability to say, I don't know. I don't know. And for an alcoholic like me to say, I don't know, I mean, if you're like me, make it up. I can't possibly tell you that I don't know. And so I humble myself. And I humble myself on a continual basis. And I mean like every day, apparently. Because every day there's some kind of drama going on that I'm going to need some help with. And, I love my sponsor. We sponsor each other, which is not so odd when you get a lot of time as a woman in this program. We got sober in almost to the same day, in the same month, in the same year, and we are the exact same age. And so it's good to go back and forth, and we have a cone of silence over us, so whatever we say is secret, and that's it, and we get to bitch and moan about everything, because between me and my stuff, I can't see what's wrong. I can't see anything. But between her and my stuff, she can see everything. And I can see everything with her, and that's how that works. So at the end of the day, there is a question that I have been told to ask all the time. Very humbling question, which is simply, where is God in all of this? No matter what is happening. No matter what is happening. You know, I think I can't remember, I'm on tape saying this because who knows what will happen, but I think I told you last week or the week before that my son and his partner are pregnant. There's no joy. I need to tell you, there's no joy in that house. That is a house that is steeped and mired in fear. And that they will lose another one. This will be the fourth. And so do they have reason to be afraid? Yes. Do they have God in their life? No. They're very busy trying to figure it out themselves. And although they talk to me and they ask me and I tell them the best that I can, by the way, you cannot 12th step the world out there. You just need to know that. You know, this is our language. This is our room. These are our steps. You can try to 12th step them out there, but you probably will, it's loony bin time. And they don't want to know about these things. So I try the best that I can. And then I realized, boom, I humbly asked my partner, why I was so crazy about this. And he very nicely said, this is between you and God, Carin. This is between you and God. What are you talking to me for? And I realized that's exactly what it is. It's between me and God. So what do I ask for? My prayer to God has been the same for more than 35 years. My prayer to God has been, I pray for clarity for situation. Let me see things as they really are. Let me see you as you really are. Not how I want you to be, not how I've dreamed for you to be, but as you really are. Let me see that job for what it really is. Let me see my home life. God, let me see my children as they really are. Not how I want them to be, not as a reflection of me, but how they really are. And I pray for clarity. And then I pray for courage. The courage that if there is something to be done with the clarity I have achieved, that I have the courage to do that. This is extraordinarily intimate prayer between me and God. I never pray for anybody, sorry, because when someone says, I'm going to pray for you, don't pray for me. Because when you pray for me, you are tacitly telling God, by the way, I know you're all big and bad and all of that, but you seem to have forgotten this woman over here, so I'm going to take care of this woman and let you do your job over there. I don't need your prayers for anything. And I don't pray for anybody because everybody's got God. Whether you even admit it or not, everybody's got God. And so, I want to tell you that, and I have time for this. About a week ago, I went to see my mother-in-law, my late husband's mother, who lives in Florida. She's in Broward County, and I go to see her once a year. Because my husband, by the way, was killed. He died on my sober anniversary. And so I know when the date is coming up. And this year was a special year because he died 32 years ago, and he was 32 when he died. So it's a big deal. So I go to see her once a year, and I sit on her couch, and I listen to her lie to me for 2 hours. And she has never disappointed me, by the way. She has never told the truth about anything. But this year was a whopper, I have to say. This year was a real whopper. And she remakes history, and she retells our lives, and she retells everything. And she started to tell the story about how we used to love to go to the flea market in Brooklyn. As a family, we would go, and she would come with us, and we were happy. It was nothing like that. Nothing. We went once when he was very sick, and when we got there, he said he didn't feel well, and she's going bouncing all over the place with the 2 kids, and everything's fine, everything's perfect, everything's good, and he turned around and looked at me and he threw up all over himself. And I know that there's a God, because God gave me the courage to take my shirt off and wipe him down so that he didn't sit there in this mess. And a man came out of nowhere, and he put his jacket on me. And he said, God be with you. Take the jacket. And that's how we went home. She remembers it a completely different way. She remembers it that we were eating and laughing and shopping. Because people lie. I know this because I am a former liar. People lie to transform their lives so they don't have to have a drink to stand it. That's what happens. So now I did my mitzvah, my good deed, and I listened to her live for 2 hours. And I don't do it because I'm a good person, because we all know after we're in this series already that we are not a good person. I'm just a regular alcoholic, just like you, working these steps, doing the best I can. And so after, 2 hours, I know for a fact that I can go. I can just stand up and say, I'm going to go now. And she says, please don't forget about me. And I said, I will not forget about you. She said, when are you coming back? When I'm here. That's when you will see me. I don't do it out of love for her because I don't love her. I don't do it out of penance. I don't do it out of anything but respect to my late husband. That's it. That I visit his mother once a year and let her recreate our lives the way she wanted them to be. And I think about that. And I think about the fact that if I had not done this step thoroughly, I would be filled with things that I wanted to say to her. Even after 32 years, I would be filled with vengeance and anger and everything. And I wasn't at all. I wasn't at all. I went in there with God and I left with God. Because there isn't any place I go that God is not with me. So I want to say, finally, I'm unafraid to go out in the world now without my armor. I don't have any fear. I don't have any fear about anything. And I say that because there's got to be people in here that are living in fear. So if I can promise you nothing else other than not drinking, I promise you right here, right now, that there is a way for you to live without drugs and without alcohol and not be afraid. And the beauty of it is all written down in a book. It's not like you have to figure it out by yourself. So I want to finish with just a couple of things because I'm pretty sure we're out of time. But my world without my armor is very different. I get to walk down the street and I'm not afraid of crossing the street because I see you. And I don't have to avoid anybody I've stolen from. And I don't have to not answer the phone because, it's a fear of some bill collector. And, I can open my mail without thinking there's a summons in there. These are all teeny tiny little gifts of living without fear. So I want to say today that with God, I got rid of the shit. It's really all it comes down to. I got rid of the shit. I don't have anything in my life that I'm afraid of. I don't have any resentments. I don't have any amends to make. I don't have anything. But if you are an alcoholic like me, I have a lot of really excellent, wonderful things going on. So I can't wait to screw them up because that's what I know how to do. And so before I can do that, I get with God. It's every morning. It's at the same time. And I say, I am incapable of handling this myself. I simply don't know how to do it. You take it. Take it all. Take it all. And we're going to talk about the freedom of doing that. Next week, we're going to gang up 8 and 9 because I did 8 in a bar, and I don't really want to talk about that for an hour. All right, that's it for tonight, guys. It's a good night to be sober. Thank you so much.